An alliance developed this week regarding the president's ongoing war with the media, or so it seemed. First, some background. You'll remember that during the president's visit to Chequers, the country home of British Prime Minister Theresa May, he ignored questions from CNN's own Jim Acosta and chose to call on John Roberts of Fox News.
That's such dishonest reporting because, of course, it happens to be NBC, which is possibly worse than CNN.
Mr. President, since you attacked CNN, can I ask you a question?
John Roberts, go ahead, John.
Can I ask you a question?
No. John Roberts, go ahead. CNN's fake news. I don't take questions. I don't take questions from CNN. CNN is fake news. I don't take questions from CNN. John Roberts of Fox.
So Roberts then asked his question without making any reference to what the president had just said. He was criticized for not calling out the president, but arguably had shown loyalty to his employer first. Then came this moment on Wednesday in the White House briefing room. NBC's Hallie Jackson was quizzing Sarah Sanders about the White House claim that when the president had said no when asked about whether Putin had interfered in the election, he was just saying no to any more questions. Sanders tried to move on to the next questioner. Here's the end of their back and forth.
When he sees that he's misspoken, he comes out and he says that. Jordan.
Follow up on
Sorry, I'm
Josh
going
for
to
the
keep
second
moving.
question.
Jordan, go ahead.
Well, just to follow up on my second question, Sarah.
Sorry,
You've
asked two. I'm going to move on to Jordan.
You told Josh the president has been
Once again, Hallie, I'm moving on to
Vladimir.
Jordan. Jordan, go ahead.
So she was trying to call on Jordan Fabian of The Hill. Here's what happened next.
Sorry, Hallie, go ahead if you want.
Thanks, Jordan. You said to
Actually,
Josh,
I'm
the
going to take a
president has
question
been
from
publicly
Jordan.
critical of Vladimir Putin. I just want to know when, because I don't think any of us remember, at least I don't remember a time when the president has publicly called up Vladimir Putin.
I think by stating the fact that the president said that Russia interfered with our election, that's a pretty bold call out of another world leader. Jordan, go ahead.
Joining me now is Jordan Fabian. Hey, Jordan, gutsy on your part insofar as when you defer, maybe Sarah Sanders isn't going to come back to you with another question.
Yeah, Michael, that thought entered my mind right after I had done that. But in the moment, I viewed it as a professional courtesy to Hallie. All of us in that room are trying to get our questions in, and follow-up questions are a very important part of trying to get to the bottom of some of these answers we're trying to get. So, Hallie hadn't finished yet. I've been covering the White House for 3.5 years. Reporters have always had the chance to ask follow-up questions in those briefings, and I thought it was important for her to be able to finish her line of questioning before the questioning moved to me.
So as I was watching you on Wednesday, of course, I was thinking about Jim Acosta and John Roberts. Were you thinking about the way that had gone down in the United Kingdom?
I honestly wasn't, Michael. When you're sitting in the chair in the briefing room, you're basically just trying to get your questions straight and make sure you don't sound like a moron on television, quite frankly. So, I was just trying to get myself in the mindset to ask my question to Sarah Sanders, and then this interaction happened. And look, I'm not going to lie, we've talked a lot behind the scenes about press corps unity, about making sure all of us can do our jobs, and in that moment, I thought deferring to Hallie was the right thing to do.
Okay, and that, of course, is my big question. Is this a sign of things to come? You just said you've had conversations with other members of the White House press corps. Do you think this may unfold in press conferences to come?
I hope so, that in the sense that all of us in the White House press corps have respect for one another and do our best to make sure we can all do our jobs. I sort of view it in a little bit of a different light. There's this dynamic now, partially because of how the president treats the media, that the media is the opposition party and we are tasked with defeating him. That's not how we view it. We are just trying to do our jobs to report on the president and the White House and tell readers what's going on. And really what I tried to do was make sure that one of my colleagues had the chance to do her job, and hopefully, in the future, if it happened to me or somebody else, we would pay it forward.
Final question. There's something on my mind as to whom you owe a duty. I mean, I would like to think that you owe a duty to the American people, but you actually owe a duty to the Hill. So if you defer to Hallie, and now Sarah, angry at you for having done so, doesn't come back to you, and if I'm your editor at The Hill, I'm going to say to you, hey, Jordan, way to take a bullet, but you never got your question, and we want you to be on record. Thoughts?
You know, that's you hit the nail on the head, Michael. You're, as a reporter in that room, you're serving different masters. So it's a very tough balancing act, you know, when you're in that moment. Luckily for me, you know, I think Sarah, you know, did the right thing and called on me afterwards, so I was able to get my question in. But that's part of the dynamic in the briefing room that I think a lot of viewers don't really get, is that when you know, Sarah goes to somebody else and somebody asks a different question, it's not you know, a slight to the other reporter in the room. It's that all of us are covering different stories, and you were trying to get that in. So again, it's a very tough balancing act, but I'm glad it worked out last week.
You know, when a guest goes on all the Sunday morning shows, they call it a Ginsburg.
Yes.
Because of back in the intern scandal, her lawyer did all the shows. If somebody should defer next week in the White House press corps, maybe they'll be calling it a Fabian. Like they pulled a Fabian. They just decided they would surrender their time. I don't know. We'll have to watch. Thank you, Jordan.
Thanks, Michael.